right, the hard things in life take a little more time for sure.
Yeah. I also, another one that came up for me was about finding joy, in everyday life. The mundane, I think one of the ways to get through things that feel mundane are to choose them. Like, instead of saying, I've got to do this, you get the opportunity to say, I want to do this. And I know that sounds kind of, like, well, yeah, of course you could do that, but it really makes a difference. And finding a way to find joy in these little moments. There was a CrossFit saying that used to go, it doesn't have to be fun to be fun. And it's probably the phrase that has stuck with me the longest, because a workout doesn't have to be fun. No, it's not actually supposed to be fun. But when you're done, you get this feeling of satisfaction inside, and you speak about it in a way that sounds like you had fun. It's a very odd thing. And I think one of the strategies I've used over the years of staying on track is finding joy in it, like finding something you really want to learn how to do and learn it, and align your life up with those things that bring you joy. Like, if it brings you joy to do stuff with your kids, find a way to incorporate fitness into your life with your kids and do it with them. Like, what a cool thing.
Yeah, for sure. I interviewed someone recently who took that to a new level. She actually, her kids' sports, she does it with them, including competitive diving. Like, when they practice, she does it too. I was super impressed with that.
I did that with soccer, with my son's soccer team. He got to a level where I really couldn't do that anymore. But we still have a family fun day on Sundays, and the dads go out and they play with the kids and against the kids, and they get a kick out of it.
That is so cool. Okay, so next question. Do you have a favorite book or a book that's been really meaningful in your life?
Yeah, I thought about that too. Probably the book that's been the most useful and in kind of prying open my desire to explore like self-improvement was really the first book was really Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Workweek. But there have been so many books along the way that have had a massive impact. The first one that pried me open from an emotional standpoint, that got me working with a life coach, that showed me that failed relationship after failed relationships were happening. It wasn't them that was the problem. I mean, certainly they had their part, but I also had my part that I hadn't been seeing. It was a book called Codependent No More. And that book rocked me. I mean, that book just, talking about pulling the veil up over top of something that was completely hidden and invisible to me. That book got me going to do a lot of work on myself. So yeah, I think those are probably right up there.
Great recommendations. And of course, I'm familiar with the 4-Hour Workweek and I love it as well, but you're not the first person to mention Codependent No More. So I'm adding that one to my reading list. That sounds like an amazing book.
It's not an easy one, especially if you find out that you've been codependent in your life. That was the big revelation for me. I'm like, what do I need this book for? In fact, I think I sat down to read it a couple of times and I got through the first chapter the first time and I judged the hell out of it and said, well, this isn't me. I don't need to read this. And then I obviously needed a little bit more time to fail at things before I went back and read it again. And then I was like, oh yeah, this is what I've been doing. So
those are the best, but hard for sure. But that's great. Is there a piece of advice that you would spread far and wide and give to everyone if you could?
It's funny. I thought about this one too. And, in fact, when you were on my podcast, we talked a little bit about this. I've learned over the years that advice giving is generally a bad idea when it's not asked for. I know you're asking for it for everybody, but I'm so attuned to not giving advice until somebody asks me, is a request for advice and help. But I guess if there was one thing that I would encourage people to take on, it would be being an explorer as opposed to being a researcher. Like, do your research and find the information, but then have the courage to take an action and have the courage to be wrong about the thing you try to fail, not to be wrong, but to fail. And then to, get up, dust yourself off, and then try again and try to in a little bit different way that works for you. And then because you develop when you do that, a habit of being willing to experiment and explore. And you also develop what works for you. So you get a chance to see which I can recommend an exercise program, but it's probably not the perfect thing for everybody in the world. So you get a chance to kind of figure out for yourself what that is. So yeah, that's what I would say.
It's a great life. I'm a great point. I'm a huge fan of failure in life as well. I think that's how we learn the most. And like I said before, my hardest times and my biggest failures ended up prepping me for wonderful things later on. So I think it's an underestimated and amazing life thing that we don't give enough credit to, for sure. And as we wrap up, I want to make sure people can also find you. And of course, the links will be in the show notes, as well as the books you mentioned and everything you talked about. But for anyone who's just listening while driving or maybe isn't going to read the show notes, let people know where to find you online.
Yeah, the best place, there are two places really, is the wholelifechallenge.com. That's where you see and learn and hear and register for the Whole Life Challenge. And then my personal website is andypetronic.com. And that's got, I do like a monthly newsletter, and all my podcasts are up there. Podcasts are also on the Whole Life Challenge page. But if somebody wants to reach out to me personally, that's probably the best place to find me. I'm on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter as at Andy Petronic. So that's also an easy place.
Wonderful. Andy, thank you so much for your time and being here. I know you're busy, and I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was really fun.
And thanks to all of you for listening, and I hope to see you again next time on the Wellness Mama podcast. If you're enjoying these interviews, would you please take 2 minutes to leave a rating or review on iTunes for me? Doing this helps more people to find the podcast, which means even more moms and families can benefit from the information. I really appreciate your time, and thanks as always for listening.